If there's complete lockdown and chaos as a consequence of the filibuster, then we'll have to go beyond what I'm talking about.
That was President Joe Biden during his first ever press conference in his presidency, and he touched on a number of topics. But the important thing to take away from that statement is that he seems far more willing to do what's necessary with the filibuster in the Senate in order to pass bolder legislation. Now, I don't want to get people's hopes up. I think it's important to continue applying pressure to the Biden administration on progressive priorities and policies. But Axios had a fascinating piece that, dare I say it, gave me a little bit of hope in the Biden administration, because it seems that he is now more willing to kind of differentiate himself from the Obama administration. And this is big news because he's warming up to the idea of either getting rid of the filibuster or really reforming it so it's not serving as an obstacle to passing bold policies. Now, he also had a secret meeting with historians that Axios found out about, and that's a good thing because according to the reporting, the historians' views were very much in sync with Biden's. It's time to go even bigger and faster than anyone expected. If that means chucking the filibuster and bipartisanship, so be it. And I do want you to hear a little more from Biden's press conference today, where he spoke at length about the possibility of getting rid of the filibuster. Take a look.
It used to be you had to stand there and talk and talk and talk and talk until you collapsed. And guess what? People got tired of talking and tired of collapsing. Filibusters broke down and we were able to break the filibuster, get a quorum and vote. So I strongly support moving in that direction. In addition to having an open mind about dealing with certain things that are just elemental to the functioning of our democracy, like the right to vote, like the basic right to vote. We've amended the filibuster in the past. But here's the deal. As you observed, I'm a fairly practical guy. I want to get things done. I want to get them done consistent with what we promised the American people. And in order to do that, in a 50-50 Senate, we've got to get to the place where I get 50 votes so that the Vice President of the United States can break the tie, or I get 51 votes without her. And so I'm going to say something outrageous. I have never been particularly poor at calculating how to get things done in the United States Senate.
I might disagree with that last statement, but the important takeaway here is his willingness to do what's necessary with the filibuster, which, I was skeptical of that. I remain skeptical. I mean, it's one thing to say it, it's another thing to actually do it. Now, one other thing I want to note is that based on Axios's reporting, Biden is apparently willing to spend even more on his upcoming infrastructure and jobs bill. We had previously shared some of the preliminary details of that legislation, and the preliminary details indicated that they were going to propose spending about $3 trillion. Now the conversation has gone to $5 trillion. And the reason Biden met with these historians, Cenk, is because he's really wanting to model his presidency and his legacy after either Roosevelt or LBJ. Like he wants to have a lasting impact on the country and really push for real reforms.
Yep. All right, so there's tons of good news in here. And in fact, there was so much hope for a second there that I dared to dream of what if we had a president we didn't always disagree with? For progressives, that seems near impossible. Like whenever you get a concession out of a Democratic president, you feel like, oh my God, it's like, it's a holiday that you'll get 2 every 4 years if you're super lucky, right? And they'll usually be minor. So when he actually seems to be going in some ways in a progressive direction, I almost don't know what to do with it. Like, great. All right, so now, of course, caution, let's give you all the details here. First of all, they're basically saying 5 trillion. It's a way of fudging it a little bit because they're saying, but the 1.9 trillion from the stimulus, now we want 3 trillion extra for infrastructure bill. But there's even more good news there. Stuffed in that 3 trillion is a little bit of Green New Deal, or maybe a decent amount of Green New Deal. So they're framing it as infrastructure because that looks more bipartisan, and it's true. It actually is infrastructure, but some of that and a lot of that infrastructure is around green energy, and that helps the economy, that helps the country, that helps higher wages, and they're not embarrassed by it. So yes, that's really good news. If you're trying to be like FDR, I love it. We're here for it. The more he thinks in that direction, the better off progressives are, because you know what FDR was? A giant progressive. The progressive. If you're heading in that direction, that's almost like saying, no, actually it's better than saying I'm trying to be like Bernie Sanders. FDR was to the left of Bernie Sanders. So if you wanna say that you're more left than Bernie Sanders, we're all here for it. We're all here for it. And then in terms of the filibuster, look, he obviously is not saying, he's saying that he's in favor of a talking filibuster. Don't get too excited. That doesn't mean he's in favor of getting rid of the filibuster. Talking filibuster is a midway point. It's not really where we want to be, and it's actually going to take up a lot of time to get past it. And just one more thought here for now, which is bipartisanship. The Republicans haven't voted for a Democratic bill in a decade? Honestly, like what bipartisanship are we talking about? So please stop with fairy tales and mythology. It's actually really embarrassing to hear any of that.
No, there really is good news. And I want to be clear about something. It's not that he's trying to be more progressive than Bernie Sanders. What he's being influenced by is Bernie Sanders. And to be quite honest, during the election, after the Democratic primaries were over, as Senator Sanders was campaigning for him and saying some pretty complimentary things about Biden, it was a little frustrating. As a Sanders supporter who enjoys salt, I wanted to see a little more saltiness. But it looks like Bernie, and not looks like, it's true that Bernie has a pretty good grasp on what the effective strategy here is, because Biden not only is more willing to go against this notion of bipartisanship, something that I thought was actually impossible. But he's also very supportive of policies that I otherwise would not think he'd be supportive of, including pushing for a floor vote on what's known as the PRO Act, and that would really strengthen labor laws throughout the country. So some of these red states, for instance, are right to work states, and so the PRO Act would really pass major reforms to protect workers in this country. The fact that Biden is like so strongly in favor of it is a good sign. And I don't think that he came up with that out of the kindness of his own heart. I think that there's been a lot of great grassroots campaigning. Bernie Sanders is also by his side, applying pressure, but doing so in a obviously diplomatic way. But there are other things that are influencing Biden based on the reporting that I've seen, including the fact that, look, we do live in a different era where voters overwhelmingly support bold economic reforms. You hear statements from Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell regarding how there will be a nuclear winter if Biden and the Democrats do away with the filibuster or reform it. And Biden doesn't seem like he cares. Biden won't hesitate. Just as he passed the $1.9 trillion COVID rescue package with 0 Republican votes and 0 regrets, his team sees little chance he's going to be able to rewire the government in his image if he plays by the rules of bringing in at least 10 Republicans. And good, at least he realizes that, at least he's not spouting like delusional statements about how we need bipartisanship within the Senate to pass legislation. The Republicans are never gonna play ball with him. And then finally, this is my favorite part of the story. This is personally my favorite part of the story. He loves the growing narrative that he's bolder and bigger thinking than President Obama, which we will elaborate on further in a story that we'll do later. But yes, Biden, you should want to stand apart from Obama. His stimulus bill from 2009 did not do enough for those in the working class, the middle class, who were hurt by the Great Recession. It only furthered inequality. And so I think Biden needs to not only acknowledge that, but go bolder to secure his legacy as someone who actually did something about a broken economic system.
Yeah, look, President Obama was perfectly attuned to conventional wisdom in DC and worked his hardest within those constructs. Unfortunately, he completely lacked the imagination that those constructs were irrelevant. And he didn't have to follow any of that conventional wisdom, and he greatly limited himself by doing so. Progressives, by pushing people like Biden and the entire Democratic Party, have begun to erode that conventional wisdom construct, and thereby doing a giant favor to Joe Biden, because then he would actually have a legacy. And so that's super important here. Look, I'm gonna give you one more piece of good news, but then I'm gonna give you two big cautions here at the end. So inside that infrastructure bill would be paid family leave. And that is desperately needed. We're the only developed nation that doesn't have it. It's absurd that we don't have it. And I genuinely believe that Biden wants it. So that's great news, okay? Now, the two giant notes of caution. One, I haven't heard a peep about the $15 minimum wage. So why wouldn't that be in this bill? And I don't even see progressives pushing for it. So yes, okay, Bernie's pushed him to be more progressive in areas that are less painful. And I'm gonna explain that here at the end. But I don't see anybody pushing that $15 minimum wage. So the biggest note of caution arises from that. Look, at the end of the day, you'll know when there's an actual massive breakthrough when a Democrat challenges corporate power. And believe it or not, this is still not it, because Chamber of Commerce wants Biden to spend $3 trillion on infrastructure. A lot of that is gonna go to business. So they're not opposed to that at all. They're a tiny bit opposed to paid family leave, but they know they're like 100 years behind the rest of the developed world, and they're gonna lose that battle. So that's gonna be a little bit that they give us. But when it gets to actual corporate issues like the wages of their workers, healthcare, subsidies to oil companies, etc., tax cuts, all of those things, that's where he's gonna run into actual opposition. And does he want to push past that opposition? No, he hasn't shown that yet. But this is about the maximum you can do before you get to real corporate power and that battle.
Yeah, look, that's a really great point. I do think that it's a positive sign. And look at me being optimistic. I don't know what's wrong with me. But I will say the fact that Biden is so transparently supportive of the PRO Act, which corporations absolutely hate. I mean, it makes it easier for labor to organize and demand more, not just in their wages, but in their working conditions. The fact that he's so vocal about that is a good sign. But again, I think that proceeding with caution is important because I don't want people to get their hopes up and then be disappointed. But more importantly, I think that the continued applied pressure on the Biden administration from the left, even though the left is still unorganized, is effective. And so we should continue pushing forward with that as well.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.